The first thing I remember is the metallic taste of blood in my mouth, the sharp crack of my jaw echoing in the sudden silence of the living room. My son-in-law, Mark, stood over me, his knuckles red, his designer shirt rumpled. But the real pain, the one that ripped through my soul, came when my own daughter, Jenna, grabbed a fistful of my graying hair. Her nails, perfectly manicured, dug into my scalp as she started dragging me toward the front door. "It's ours now, Mom," she hissed, her voice a venomous whisper I didn't recognize. "You should have just stayed out of it." All for $5 million, the fortune I had built with my bare, flour-dusted hands. Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today. My name is Clara, and this is the story of how my life's work was stolen by the two people I trusted most. Drop your city in the comments. Where are you tuning in from? For 35 years, my world smelled of cinnamon, yeast, and melting chocolate. I was the owner of Clara's Comfort Bakes, a little corner of heaven nestled in the heart of Portland, Oregon. It wasn't just a business, it was my heart and soul, the legacy I built with my late husband, Tom. After he passed from a sudden heart attack 5 years ago, the bakery became my sanctuary. The early mornings kneading dough, the smiles of regulars picking up their Saturday morning croissants. It was the rhythm that kept my broken heart beating. My only daughter, Jenna, was the other half of that rhythm. She was my everything, the beautiful, bright girl who I thought hung the moon. When she brought Mark home, I was thrilled. He was charismatic, handsome, and showered her with affection. He worked in tech finance, a vague but impressive-sounding field that explained his expensive watches and slick European car. He called me Mom from day one, helping me with heavy flour sacks at the bakery and always remembering Tom's birthday with a bottle of his favorite scotch, a gesture that melted my defenses. I saw the way Jenna looked at him, her eyes shining with an adoration that reminded me of how I once looked at Tom. How could I question that? There were little things, of course. Whispered, tense phone calls Mark would take on the patio, his back to the window. The way he'd casually mention a deal gone south, but laugh it off as the cost of doing business. Jenna became fiercely protective of him. Once, I gently asked about their plans for a down payment on a house, offering to help. Her face tightened. "Mark has it handled, Mom. His investments are about to pay off big. You just don't understand his world." I let it go, chalking it up to my old-fashioned ways. I trusted my daughter's judgment. That was my first mistake. Last year, at 58, my joints began to ache more than the kneading could soothe. I decided it was time to sell the bakery. An artisanal food conglomerate made me an offer that took my breath away. $5.2 million. It was enough to retire comfortably, travel a little, and most importantly, start the Tom Miller Foundation for young culinary artists, a dream he and I had shared. Over a celebratory dinner at a fancy downtown restaurant, I told Jenna and Mark the news. Their reactions were different. Jenna's eyes welled with happy tears, but Mark's eyes had a different kind of glint, not happiness, but hunger. He leaned forward, his voice low and urgent. "Clara, this is incredible, but don't just let that money sit in a bank. I have an opportunity, a once-in-a-lifetime chance to get in on the ground floor of a green energy startup. We could triple that money in a year." He painted a dazzling picture of solar innovation and ethical profits. Jenna was captivated, her hands clasped under her chin. "Mom, imagine. We could do so much more for Dad's foundation with that kind of return." The "we" hung in the air, a silken net I didn't see closing around me. My gut screamed no. Tom had always been cautious, a man who believed in slow growth and tangible assets. But looking at my daughter's hopeful face, I felt a familiar pang of guilt. I'd worked so much when she was young. Maybe this was my chance to give her the world, to secure her future in a way I never could before. Mark was relentless. He came over with glossy prospectuses and complex charts, throwing around terms like Series A funding and disruptive technology. He made me feel small, unsophisticated. My lawyer and Tom's oldest friend, Leo, was wary. "Clara, this smells funny," he'd said over the phone. "Let me do a full due diligence report. Don't sign anything." When I told Mark, his charm curdled into something ugly. "He's a small-town lawyer, Clara. He doesn't get it. This deal is closing in 72 hours. We're either in or out." Jenna started to cry. "I can't believe you don't trust the man I love, Mom, after everything he's done for us." The emotional blackmail was a masterpiece. I felt cornered, foolish, and old. Against Leo's frantic advice, I went to the bank the next day. Mark was there, holding the transfer papers, his pen clicking impatiently. I signed away my entire life's work, my husband's legacy, and my future. The bank teller gave me a concerned look. I just smiled weakly and walked out, feeling a profound sense of dread that I pushed deep, deep down. The first few weeks were filled with exciting updates. Mark set up an online portal where I could see my investment growing. The numbers climbed steadily. He and Jenna bought a stunning modern house in the West Hills, explaining that their early dividends had come through. They insisted I was next. But then, the updates slowed. My calls to Mark went to voicemail. The portal started showing a system maintenance error. A cold knot of fear began to form in my stomach. Jenna was evasive. "It's just the market, Mom. It fluctuates. Mark's handling it." But her voice was strained. Her eyes darted away from mine. The breaking point came from a place I never expected. A wrong number. A woman with a soft, tired voice called my landline. "Is Matthew there?" she asked. "I'm sorry, you have the wrong number," I said. "Oh, I'm so sorry to bother you," she sighed. "My husband, he's been gone for a week. He was supposed to be in Portland closing a big solar panel deal. Your number was the last one he called from this area." She sent me a picture of her husband, Matthew. It was Mark. Standing beside him was a woman and two small children. My world tilted on its axis. The woman, whose name was Sarah, told me a story that mirrored my own. A life savings invested in a can't-miss opportunity. A man who was charming and attentive until the money was gone. I hung up the phone and threw up in the kitchen sink. The betrayal was so absolute, so monstrous, it felt unreal. I immediately called Leo. He was grim. Within 24 hours, he confirmed the worst. The solar company was a shell corporation registered in Delaware. The money had been wired through a series of offshore accounts and had vanished. There was no investment. There was only theft. Mark wasn't just a con man. He was a professional predator. And my daughter, my Jenna, was either his accomplice or his most devoted fool. I needed to know which. I didn't call the police. Not yet. I had to see her face. I printed everything. The shell company records, a photo of Mark, or Matthew, with his other family. The damning evidence of my own ruin. I was going to get my answer. Armed with my folder of lies, I drove to their beautiful new house. My house. I found them in the living room, laughing over a glass of wine. My presence sucked the air out of the room. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. My voice was eerily calm as I laid the papers on their marble coffee table, one by one. "The company doesn't exist, Mark," I said, my eyes locked on his. Or should I say, Matthew? I placed the photo of his Arizona family on top of the pile. Jenna gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Mark's charming facade didn't just crack, it shattered. His face went pale, then purple with rage. Jenna started sobbing. "I didn't know, Mom. I swear I didn't know about them. He told me he was in debt, that we just needed to borrow the money to get back on our feet. He promised he'd pay it all back." She was his fool, a greedy, naive fool, but a fool nonetheless. "You knew it was a lie," I screamed, the dam of my composure finally breaking. "You let him steal my life." Mark lunged forward. "You were never getting that money back, you old hag." He shoved me hard. I stumbled backward, reaching for my phone to call 911. That's when he punched me. The force sent me sprawling to the floor. As I lay there, dizzy and tasting blood, my daughter made her choice. Instead of helping me, she chose him. She chose the lie. That's when she grabbed my hair and began to drag me out of the house I had paid for as if I were a piece of trash. But what they didn't know was that I had made one last call before I arrived. Leo had told me to. He'd told me to park down the street and wait 5 minutes. He had called 911, reporting a domestic disturbance and suspected fraud. As Jenna dragged me onto the porch, the night exploded with the wail of sirens. Red and blue lights washed over their horrified faces as 2 police cars screeched to a halt, their neighbors spilling onto their lawns to watch the whole sordid affair. The aftermath was a blur of police reports, hospital visits, and legal meetings. Mark was arrested for assault, grand larceny, and, thanks to Sarah in Arizona, bigamy. Jenna was charged as an accomplice to fraud. The trial was a local spectacle. The bakery heiress betrayal splashed across the Portland news. They found Mark guilty on all counts. He's serving a 15-year sentence. Jenna took a plea deal, testifying against him, and is serving 3 years in a minimum security facility. The courts managed to recover less than 10% of my money. I had to sell my house, the home Tom and I had shared for 3 decades. For a while, I was adrift in a sea of grief and humiliation. But one day, while volunteering at a local shelter, I started baking again. Just simple things: bread, cookies. Seeing the smiles on the faces of people who had lost everything reminded me of why I started in the first place. My wealth was never the money, it was the joy my hands could create. I now rent a small apartment and run a baking program for at-risk youth. It's not the foundation I dreamed of, but it's real, and it's mine. Jenna writes me letters from prison, filled with apologies and regret. I read them, but I don't reply. The daughter I raised is gone. Maybe one day, a new woman will walk out of that prison, and maybe, just maybe, we can find a way to start over. But for now, I'm healing. I'm rebuilding. I lost my money, but I refuse to lose myself. If this story hit home for you, hit that like button and comment with a 1 below. I know I'm not alone in this. Share your own story if you feel comfortable. And don't forget to subscribe for more tales of resilience. Thank you for listening.